Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah Harihi Om Dhyayamo Dhavalavagunthanavatim Tejomayim Naishtikim Snigdhapangavilokinim Bhagavatim Mandasmitashremukhim Vatsalyamritavarshinim Sumadhuram Sankirtanalapinim Syamangim Madhusikta Suktim Amritanandatmikam Om Amriteshwaryai Namah Om Amriteshwaryai Namah Om Amriteshwaryai Namah. Om Amriteshwaryai Namah. Just getting the computer ready. There was a small technical glitch. In any case, let's continue with our discussion on Bhaja Govindam. We discussed the verses 15 and 16 the last week. And we'll move on to the 17th verse. And before that, as we have done it in the previous sessions, let us recap all the points, the gist of every verse that we have discussed till now. The first one is about the technicalities and so-called grammar that we set to life and make life complicated. We need to go beyond that. Second one is about controlling or curbing our greed to accumulate wealth and to go beyond that. Third one, about our unnecessary fixation on the physical appearance, to go beyond that. The fourth one is about unpredictability of life and to be prepared for whatever surprise life throws at us. The fifth one being about relationship. People will give us importance as long as we have abilities and wealth, and then it just weans out. Similar is the sixth verse, wherein it says, as long as we have life, people remember us. It is very natural. Thereafter, people will slowly start forgetting about us. The importance weans out there too. The seventh verse was about the various stages in our life: childhood, adulthood, old age, wherein we are obsessed with, or we are preoccupied with so many of the things that we are unnecessarily engaged with or are too fixated upon, and seldom do we invest our faculty in actually contemplating on the actual reality, the thing that we need to actually focus on. The eighth verse reminds us to raise the question, who am I after all? What am I? What are the relationships that I have? What does it all this mean? The ninth verse, once we ask that question, how do I begin the journey onto the right path? Begin with right company, thereby developing their selfless attitude, detachment, thereby overcoming delusion, and thereafter the supreme truth would be revealed to us. The 10th verse is about things that we consider significant in one phase of life eventually becomes insignificant. To remind ourselves, why get obsessed with things which eventually are going to be insignificant for us or to us? Why obsess about them? So always maintain that distance. with things that we unnecessarily get bound by. The 11th verse was about how, again continuing with that, about impermanence and why take unnecessary pride on these impermanent things. We are just wasting our energy and faculty in doing so. The 12th one is about how life gives us dual experiences. We are successful in life as long as we don't get swayed away by the emotions of experiences that are dual in nature, either pulling us down or pulling us towards too much sorrow or pulling us towards too much excitement. We need to stay in the middle so as to make life meaningful. The 13th verse is about how good company, and in this case not just people, more importantly the company of the Sadguru, which is the boat that would take us across the ocean of samsara. The 14th verse is about our spiritual growth. We can have two kinds of growth, the outward show-off growth or the inward growth. We need to focus on the actual inward growth, and outward growth will automatically happen along with that. The 15th and the 16th verses that we discussed the last week, they were about desires. We may get weak, we may lose everything that we have. Even then, the tendency to hold on to desires or the tendency to desire a lot still holds strong. We need to remind ourselves of that and slowly let go of it or work on it, is what the 15th verse and 16th verse were pointing out to us, and that's what we discussed the last week. Today, we'll discuss the 17th verse. This verse is about rituals, prescribed way of doing things, how significant they are and how do we deal with them, or at what level should we keep it at, is what this verse, the 17th verse, talks about. So let's discuss the 17th verse. It goes as Kurute Ganga Sagara Gamanam Vrata Paripalana Athava Danam Jnana Vihina Sarvamatena Bhajatina Muktim Janma Shatena. So let's, as always, look into the pronunciation first. Let's go over it word by word. Kurute. Please respond twice. Kurute. Kurute. Ganga. 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 Sagara. 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 Just to remind ourselves of the difference between the A with the bar and without the bar. If both the A's in Sagara had the bar over it, it would have been Sagara. Had none of them have a bar over it, it would be Sagara. In this case, the first one has a bar, the second one doesn't. So it is Sagara. 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 Gamanam. 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 Kurute Ganga Sagara Gamanam is the first line. The second one, Vrata. 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 V-R-A-T-A. V-R. Vra. Vra. Vrata. Paripalana. 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 The P-A has a bar over it. The A has a bar there. So it is Palana. Athava. It is T-H. So it is Tha. Athava. 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 Danam. 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 Vrata Paripalanam Athava Danam is the second line. Third one, Jnana. This time I made it a point to spell it as G, the N with the tilde over it. So Jnana, Jnana, Jnana. Vihina. The first I doesn't have a bar, the second I has a bar. The second one is long, the first one is short. Vihina. 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 Ath jnana vihina. Sarva matena. So sarva matena put together would be sarva matena. Jnana vihina sarvamatena. The third line. The fourth one, bhajati. BH, so bha. Bhajati. Na. Muktim. Janma. Shatena. S with the mark on the top, so flat tongue and sha. No, the sha sound. Shatena. Bhajati na muktim janma shatena is the fourth line. So the verse goes as Kurute Ganga Sagara Gamanam Vrata Paripalanam Athavanam Jnana Vihina Sarvamatena Bhajatina Muktim Janmashatena. So let's chant it or sing it in tune twice. If you're familiar, please join me the first time. Else, join me the second time after taking a listen for the first time. Kurute Ganga Sagara Gamanam Vrata Paripalanam Athavanam Jnana Vihina Sarvamatena Bhajatina Muktim Janmashatena. Once more. Kurute Ganga Sagara Gamanam Vrata Paripalanam Athavanam Jnana Vihina Sarvamatena Bhajatina Muktim Janmashatena. So let's look into the meaning word by word. Kurute. Kurute, to happen to do. To do what? Ganga Sagara Gamanam. Ganga, referring to the great river Ganga, the Ganges. And Sagara translates to ocean or sea. So Kurute Ganga Sagara Gamanam. Gamanam, to go, to visit, or effectively it means to take a dip in Sagara or Ganga. So Kurute Ganga Sagara Gamanam. Gamanam, to go, and to go here also would refer to going on pilgrimage. Typically, when you go on pilgrimage, you will have a auspicious river associated with temples, typically in India. So you take a dip in that river and then you visit the temple. So when you go on pilgrimage, there's one other interpretation we could have. It says Ganga Sagara Gamanam. Ganga is going into the ocean or is going towards the ocean. Could be another interpretation. We could just look at it when we discuss the overall message that this verse talks about. But for now, let's take the interpretation as this. We go where? On pilgrimage, and as part of pilgrimage, we take dip in a river as auspicious as Ganga and the ocean. Then Vrata Paripalanam. Vrata, to take a vow, customary vow that we take, like fasting or vow of silence, of or vow of abstaining from certain things, worldly pleasures that we usually get involved in, etc. So vrata paripalana, to ardently observe, to ardently follow, to ardently preserve it. So to ardently take up and follow vows, paripalanam, athava, or otherwise, athava, danam, donation. We donate money or donate in kind, etc. So you take up pilgrimage, take a dip in auspicious water bodies, or you take vow, whatever kind of vow, or you do donation, all of them. The message here is jnana vihina, jnana, knowledge or wisdom, vihina, lack of wisdom. So when there is lack of wisdom, sarva matena, sarva, all, mata typically literally translates to a faith. So otherwise we could interpret it as traditions. So sarva matena, as per all the traditions, when all these great deeds, pilgrimage, donation, vows, etc., are performed with lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, bhajati na muktim, bhajati na muktim, we would not attain, or it is not taking us towards liberation, mukti. It is not taking us towards liberation. Janma, birth, shatena, shata translates to 100, the number 100. In this case, it is the generic term for numerous. Even through numerous births of doing all these, when we do it without right understanding, it is basically meaningless. It is of no use. Even these great deeds are of no use. Even these noble deeds are of no use. So to summarize the points, one could perform all the various auspicious austerities like going on pilgrimage, taking holy dip in the Ganges or any auspicious river or the ocean, can observe all the various customary vows, and could even give donation in form of money, in form of anything else, any other item. But if these deeds are performed, we have the summarizing points, slides. If these are performed without the right understanding, or if they are performed with the lack of what they are actually meant for, the understanding of that, with that knowledge, if they are performed, there's just no point performing them. We will never reach the ultimate goal of liberation that we seek to as we grow spiritually. Even numerous births that we take and perform these austerities, they are of no use unless and until we actually perform them with the understanding. We have the right understanding of why we are performing them. It's like we learn mathematics in school. We are just taught all these linear equations. We are taught about calculus, all the differentiation and whatever else. Or we are taught in biology about all these various organs that we have in our body. In chemistry, we are taught about the organic part of it, organic chemistry, things that basically form the living things in the world, etc., and the non-organic chemistry, etc., right? We just learn them as they are. There's just no point unless and until we actually understand what is the whole point. We just learn differentiation and or linear algebra just as a subject. I mean, we may get good grades, but that is not fetching us anything other than just good grades. Unless and until we actually learn to apply that in life, what's the point in acquiring that knowledge? It's just waste of time and effort. Similarly, when all these austerities are prescribed by the sages and seers of ancient times to give us something as part of our spiritual growth. Unless and until we actually understand that message, understand the significance of them, why they are the way they are, we are not going to grow spiritually, is the gist of this verse, is what this verse is pointing out to us. So spirituality is not like a business model wherein I do something and I gain something in return, or I do something and because I do that I grow spiritually. So it's not like, oh, I meditate for 2 hours every day, I'm going to grow this much. If I meditate for 3 hours every day, I'm going to grow this much. Maybe it may be true to some extent, but that's not the ultimate way of doing it. Even if we do it for half an hour, but we do it with the right attitude, we'll go much further or much farther than doing it for 3 hours, but not with the right attitude or right understanding. So spirituality is not just like a business model that you give so much, you get so much back. Amma puts it beautifully. Even in the Awakened Children, Amma mentions about it. Amma says, it is believed that you go to Kashi. Kashi is the sacred city, the sacred town, Varanasi, where Lord Shiva's temple is there, Vishwanath temple. So it is believed that you go to Kashi and you pass away in Kashi. And many people, it has been a tradition wherein once you are very old and you have no more purpose in life, people just go to Kashi. And it is believed that you go to Kashi and die there, you will attain liberation. So people just go to Kashi, do everything possible materialistic in life, and finally they say, let me go to Kashi. Now I'll be absolved of all these ill deeds that I have performed. So Amma says, it is believed that you go to Kashi, and once you go to Kashi, and you die there, you'll be, liberated. But Amma says, if that's the case, every resident of Kashi should be a realized being, right? Everyone living in Kashi should be a realized being, which is not the case. So definitely just literally going to Kashi, you get liberated. We should go beyond such thoughts. And that's what this verse is also talking about, literally doing things without understanding. Similarly, Amma says, we consider temples and places of worship with so much reverence, and telling, once you go to the temple, it makes such a positive effect in us. And typically you would see in many temples in India, you'll have a line of beggars or homeless people sitting outside the temple, because people come to temple with a good attitude. So there's a good chance they would give them some money or give them something. So with that expectation, there are a lot of beggars there. And Amma says, the beggars are in the temple, but they are there to get money, or they're there to get food, not to get grace. So if temple is that great a place wherein you just go and you get liberated, all these beggars should get liberated. Temples are places where you could get liberated, but you could get liberated, there's a condition to that. You get liberated when you have the right attitude and the right mindset, which when one lacks, just going to temple would become mechanical in nature, is what Amma is trying to say here. So right understanding is most important. What we do is very important, but right understanding is most important. When we do it with the right understanding, only then even the meaningful things, so-called meaningful things that we do, will fetch us the fruit of the action. The rituals, places of pilgrimage, they all give us the right environment to delve deep within, because the world is so distracting in nature. It agitates our mind so much. It least gives us the calm that we need so as to focus within. Definitely these pilgrimages, these pilgrimage sites, all these various rituals, all these prescribed way of doing things by the sages and seers, they do set the right environment, they do help us set the right mindset to delve deep within. They give us clarity. They give us clarity in mind, peace of mind that we need. But they do have a reason why we do it. Unless and until we understand why we are doing it, there's no point. Right from the very insignificant little things that we do as part of rituals to the big rituals that we do, all of them have a meaning behind it. Amma reminds us of all these different examples in different parts of awakened children in her talks, during the question answer sessions, etc. Like lighting the incense during a satsang or during a puja. It may seem like a very simple thing to do. Lighting incense, let's just light the incense and just do the puja. That is one way of doing it. Or otherwise, to understand why are we lighting incense. Definitely lighting the incense, if it is not the chemical, the natural, unless and until it's the natural incense, some of them which give us allergy, etc., that's a different experience. But the good incense, the natural incense that we may use, it kind of calms our senses. The smell, it sets an environment wherein we feel much more calm. I'm sure we have experienced that. And more importantly, incense gives us the message that it burns itself. While it burns itself, it gives others fragrance. The message of selfless sacrifice to help others as much as we can. And that's what life of Mahatmas like Amma is. To take up the burden upon themselves to give as much happiness and joy to others. So incense gives us that message. If we light an incense every time we light it, if we remind ourselves of that message, definitely that's going to create much more impact in us than just smelling the fragrance of the incense. Or lighting camphor, like Amma says, lighting the camphor is the message of the mind getting sublimed. The camphor sublimes when it comes in contact with fire. Fire of wisdom, fire of knowledge. Our mind should be such when it ignites in the fire of knowledge or wisdom, there is no residue behind it, just sublimes. It goes from solid state to the gaseous state, wherein there is no residue behind. The mind should be such. There should be no residue of ego left behind. It should just sublime in the fire of knowledge or wisdom. So every time we perform arati, it shouldn't be just the mechanical circular action. It should be something that we remind ourselves of every time we perform arati. I've seen people who make the whole arati process very mechanical. It's very difficult to hold the bell in one hand, go this way, and then with the right hand you go circular way. So I've seen people who go with the arati this way and the bell goes round and round. Or sometimes it becomes like a jogging. I've seen people do arati like this. So it shouldn't, that is because people are not used to it. That's totally fine. But the idea is we do it, rather than doing it just mechanically, do it with the right understanding. That will fetch us more benefit than just doing it mechanically. Or doing homa. Similarly, we do the fire ceremony wherein we offer various prescribed things into the homa. There are huge homas that happen wherein you not just offer, the natural little things, the prescribed things. They offer big belongings like a beautiful silk sari into it, or that so many things that is dear to you, you offer it into the big fire pit. All this is, the message here is to let go of things that you are attached to, and then you offer it to the fire. So rather than just mechanically offering it into the fire, we need to keep reminding ourselves everything that I take pride in, everything that I own, one day is going to perish, is what Homa teaches us. And here we are talking about the holy dip in the river, right? Kurute Ganga Sagara Gamanam, to take a holy dip in the water. The idea is not that the belief is that you take a dip in Ganga, you are cleansed of all the sins that you have done. In which case, like Amma says, everyone who lives by Ganga and takes a dip in Ganga every day would be realized by now. That's not the case. The idea here is when we take a dip in Ganga, the idea is we should make our life, we should make our mind like the river. However, whatever obstacles come, the river ever keeps flowing towards what? Towards the ocean. Most of the rivers in India are like that. They flow towards the infinite ocean. And our attitude should be such, whatever distractions that we have in life, whatever hurdles that come in life, our mind should always flow towards the ultimate goal, towards the supreme. And when you take a dip, everything that comes off your body is all going towards the infinite. In the ocean, the river just takes it towards the ocean, is the idea. Similarly, every action that I perform, let it go towards the supreme, is what the actual meaning or the actual significance of taking a holy dip in a river is. It's to make everything that is associated with me, whatever I do, whatever I think, whatever I say, let it all go towards the supreme. There is this verse that people chant as part of various rituals, Sarva Deva Namaskara Keshavam Prati Gacchati. The idea there is, what we see, the literal meaning of the verse is, we have water all across there, it becomes it evaporates and becomes a cloud, and it comes down in form of rain, it becomes a river, and finally goes back to the ocean where it came from. So everything that we do, everything that is, finally it goes towards the supreme. That's how our efforts, that's how our words, deeds, and actions should, and our thoughts should be. They should all flow towards the supreme. And then the verse talks about giving charity, giving things in charity, to donate things. It signifies detachment. It's not that I give something, now I need to get something back. If we give, if we engage ourselves in charity with that attitude, that is no more charity, and that's not going to fetch us what we ought to fetch in form of charity. It's not business, like we mentioned. We get better happiness when we donate or when we give something with the right attitude of detachment. I give something to someone, just give it. Just give it for the sake of giving. That's when we get real joy from being free from whatever we are trying to give, free from being bound by it, free from being attached to it. Like the old times when the yajnas and the homas used to be performed, people would give things in donation. Back then it used to be cattle, because cattle was considered wealth. The barter system used to happen in form of cattle. Rich people have a lot of cattle, so they would give it away to those in need for their livelihood, milk, for irrigation or agriculture, whatever they use the cattle for. So the idea is to give. So when you give a BMW, like, oh God, I'm donating this BMW to this temple, please help me get a Maserati now. Should not be the attitude. Giving away BMW is so that I'm no more attached to BMW. Even if I get a Honda now, even if I get a Toyota car, I'm fine with it. Should be the right attitude when we donate. Otherwise, donating is of no use. That action is of no use. And then observing vows, as the verse points out, is actually to bring our mind under control. Because our mind wants everything that we see, everything that we hear, everything that we smell, everything that we taste, we want more and more and more of it. The whole idea of observing a fast or any form of vow is to teach our mind that you are not the boss, I am the boss. I have things under control. You are not the one who is going to have things under control. So taking a vow is to implement that, is to make that happen. But if we get too obsessed with the vow, it's actually firing back. It's actually defeating the purpose. It happens wherein people take vow of silence, wherein they say, I'm not going to talk today at all. The whole point of taking the vow of silence is I'm going to really calm myself down because I'm not going to talk much. My mind is going to calm down. But when they are in situation, they become so agitated that they are not able to talk, and they want to express a lot of things. They do start doing actions. I remember this particular case wherein one of my brahmachari brothers took a vow of silence one day, and we were having lunch, and we were having lunch, and then I was about to go up to get a second serving, and he gestured something to me. I was like, what? And I should confess, I made an effort to not understand what he's telling me. So he gestured something. He basically wanted a particular curry. And I was like, what do you want? He was making all these gestures to tell me, get me that particular curry. And I made it a point not to understand that. And that kind of agitated him. Though he didn't speak, he was completely not in peace of mind. So the idea of taking vow of silence was completely defeated there. He could have rather just spoken and be at peace peaceful, rather than not speaking and just agitating himself because he's not able to express. He's getting all the more agitated. So the whole point of observing vows of silence or fasting or whatever is to calm ourselves down. Unless and until we do it with that understanding and we just do it mechanically, it's only going to give us less of benefit, or it's going to harm us more than giving us any form of benefit. We have discussed about the example of the pet dog that always has this habit of jumping upon whoever the guest be, and jump on them, pounce on them, and start licking their face, right? And this is the example that Amma used to give long time back. And one of the guests tells the owner, looks like you have not trained your dog the right way. And he says, I've tried everything. I scold him, I punish him, it just doesn't listen to me. He says the next time it pounces on someone and does this, don't reprimand it. Just do one thing. Take a piece of paper, roll it, tap on the head, and just do it. And do it a few number of times. And he tries that the first time. The dog doesn't respond at all, doesn't care about it. But he does it again and again and again and again. Fifth, sixth time, the dog starts taking notice of him doing it every time it does this licking. And it definitely is not a comfortable thing for the dog. And every time he does it again and again, slowly the dog starts understanding the pattern, that there is something. Every time I'm doing this, he's tapping it on my head and I'm not liking this. And slowly the dog stops doing it. And most of the dog training techniques are all based on this very approach. Similarly, the mind is such. The mind, when it gets all the freedom it needs so as to just get distracted, we need to have such mechanisms. And vows that we take, the customary vows that we take, are verily this tapping on the head, wherein you teach your mind that, you have your way, but not always. You're going to have these little tapping on your head, and slowly, it's not that once you take the vow of fasting, the very next day you become spiritually evolved. You have to do it again and again and again and again, so that the mind starts understanding it's not going to get the food every time it wants, or it's not going to get the materialistic pleasure every time it wants. The idea is to teach the mind, eventually it happens. It's a steady, consistent process that we need to go through. So vows are basically that. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to inculcate the right habits. That's what the vows help us with. When you do something once, it's just an action. You do it a few number of times, it slowly starts becoming habit. And you do it again and again, the habit becomes our nature, like Amma says. The example again that I've given before, during my throat surgery, I was given the vocal cord surgery that I had, I was given general anesthesia. I was completely knocked out. And when I came back to the post-surgery, what do you call it, the post-surgery recovery room. In the recovery room, I was, of course, knocked out. Eventually, slowly, I started gaining consciousness. And once I completely woke up, the nurse was giving me the best smile she could. And I was asking her what happened. She said, "You have been the best patient that I have had, because you were half conscious and you just got up from your bed. You started folding your bed sheet. You completely prepared the bed, made it all right, put the bed sheet there, and then you lay down again." So, because that's the habit that has been inculcated into me right from young age, right from home and then in the ashram, that every time you wake up, you immediately make your bed, clean it up. So even in that semi-conscious state, it just became the nature. So vows are actually meant for that, to train your mind to make it into a habit, eventually make things into nature. That when I see, say, one of my personal favorites in terms of food is pav bhaji, an Indian food, Western Indian delicacy. And when I see a pav bhaji, would I just lose all my control and just start, even before they serve, just go and just grab it and start gobbling it? That's not how my mind should be. The next level is, oh, I'll wait till you serve, but once you serve, I'm just going to gobble it, would be the second step. Third step is, even when you serve it to me, I'm going to be civilized or controlled and then consume it slowly. Third one is, even if it is kept in front of me, if I decide I don't want it, I should be able to abstain from eating it, would be the ultimate state. All of them should be a possibility in us. I should go and able to eat it. At the same time, I should be able to abstain from it. It's not that eating pav bhaji is sinful. It's just that I should have control. I should be able to dictate that I should eat it or not eat it, is the whole point. Once you have this in practice, when we are in difficult situations in life, the mind remains in our control. In some other situation, not dealing with pav bhaji, your mind would still listen to you. That's the whole point in having all these vows. So, the vows are to train our mind, our senses, to discipline them, to bring them under our control. But at the same time, we become too obsessed with the vows. That is defeating the purpose, because you're getting obsessed with, to overcome the obsession with pav bhaji, I take up the vow of not eating pav bhaji. Now, if I become obsessed with not eating pav bhaji, that is also an obsession. We are still losing control over our mind, because now I'm too obsessed with not eating pav bhaji, right? So that's not what we should get to. So unless and until we perform these with right understanding, it is going to defeat the whole purpose. So that's what this verse is trying to point out. So all these rituals, all these pilgrimage that we take up, all these vows that we take up should be with the right understanding. Not that these rituals are useless. They're all very important. They all have have an effect in us when we perform them. Like the name that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, or the last week in Lalita Sahasranama, Bindu Tarpana Santushta, Om Bindu Tarpana Santushtaya Namah. It was about how the Divine Mother, who is pleased by the rituals that are performed, focusing on the Bindu, the very center part of the Sri Chakra. It's a ritualistic offering that is performed as part of the worship of Sri Chakra. So, the Divine Mother, who is pleased by these rituals. So these rituals do have a meaning, they do have a purpose. The idea is not getting obsessed with the ritual, is what we discussed when we discussed the 964th name in Lalita Sahasranama, Bindu Tarpana Santushta. And after that discussion, one of you wrote back to me telling you shared a beautiful story with me. It's a Buddhist anecdote. It's one of the anecdotes that Lord Buddha, Gautama Buddha, used to share as part of his teachings. It was about a man who is going on this long journey, and then all of a sudden he comes in front of a river that he needs to cross, or a big water body that he needs to cross. So now he thinks, what do I do? How do I cross? He then finds some wood, some twigs, some few other things that he puts together and makes or builds a makeshift raft. And now he climbs on the raft and rows himself across the water body. Now he goes to the other side of the water body. Now a question comes in his mind, is what Lord Buddha talks about. A question comes in his mind. I put in so much effort in building this raft, and this raft is definitely very useful. Because it is useful and I have put in so much effort, it makes all the sense that I carry this raft with me, this makeshift raft with me. But is it logical or is it practical that he does that? He already has to go a long way. He already has a lot of things that he's carrying. Should he add one more burden to himself? He shouldn't. The whole point of the raft was to get him across the water body. Once that is done, the purpose of the raft is over. So our rituals are like that. We put in a lot of effort to observe a vow. We put in a lot of effort in going in a pilgrimage. We put in a lot of effort in making a donation. Definitely, we should recognize that. But once we cross that river, once the purpose of that is over, we should be able to let go of it and move forward. That's the whole point of all these rituals. These rituals are to develop discipline within us, to take us across the state that we are in, to help us grow spiritually. But eventually, we need to get rid of it. So the answer to Gautama Buddha's question, should we carry the raft? We shouldn't. So these rituals are such, not that they are useless, they are very useful, they are very meaningful. But once the purpose is served, we should be able to grow beyond. So all these rituals and austerities, when they are performed with the right understanding, that will help us outgrow them and move forward. It's like all the things that we do in middle school, elementary school, like we discussed during the name that we discussed in Lalita Sahasranama, they all have a purpose. We are not just taught science, math, and social studies, etc. in school. We are taught so many other things. But as we grow older, we grow to the higher level of education, we forget about them. But they did have a subtle effect in us to develop us as a student. We are taught A, B, C, D, A for apple, B for ball. We don't go do our PhD and say A for apple, B for ball. But A for apple, B for ball did have an impact in us when we learnt it in the kindergarten. But when we are at the level of PhD, it is no more significant, but not that they were useless. They did have a role at that stage. And when we grow, when we go forward, we should understand that we shouldn't get bound by it. Rather, we should outgrow them and move forward. So talking about understanding, so we need to have that understanding when we perform all these rituals and participate in them. Only that understanding will help us grow and help us grow beyond. During one of the summer tours, we were traveling from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Dallas, Texas. And Amma stopped for the evening chai and dinner. And as it is always, Amma has meditation and then serves food, Amma would have people share some jokes, lighter moments, and also there are spiritual discussions. So that day the discussion somehow got to the topic of Bhakti, devotion. And Amma was talking about there are so many different forms of Bhakti. And she was specifically talking about the Bhakti of the Gopis, the Sakhya Bhava, the Bhava of friendship, the Bhava of also why am I not getting the term? The attitude of beloved that the gopis behold the attitude that they have towards Lord Krishna. And Amma was also mentioning about the attitude of Hanuman towards Lord Rama. His devotion towards Lord Rama was about that of the attitude of a servant, one who serves the Lord. So Amma was talking about how the gopis, they had true and steadfast devotion towards Lord Krishna. Even the rishis and the munis, the sages and seers who have performed penance for so long and longed to be with the divine, spend time with an incarnation, even they didn't get the opportunity that the gopis and the gopas got the opportunity with Lord Krishna. But Amma was mentioning how their love was completely blind, in the sense they just had no condition. It was, in a way, once Lord Krishna is in front of you, you don't see anything else. You just become blind. You see only Krishna in front of you. And Amma was giving the example of how when in Vrindavan, when they would hear Lord Krishna's flute, a gopi would be cooking food. She'll just take the ladle along with her and just run. The food would be on the stove and it would just burn. Or another gopi would be, in the shower, and she would just run half dressed towards Lord Krishna. Or someone else would be nursing a sick in-law or nursing a sick husband. And once she hears the flute, she would just put it all there and run towards Lord Krishna. That was the level of dedication, that was the level of devotion they had towards Krishna. But Amma was pointing out how this can always be misinterpreted. When you say a gopi ran half-dressed to Lord Krishna, or she didn't take care of the husband, or she didn't take care of her responsibilities as food, there could be misinterpretation or misunderstanding or, an incompleteness to the whole process. When we compare that with the devotion of Hanuman, his devotion was more complete because his devotion was based on understanding. His devotion was based on knowledge. His attitude towards Lord Rama was completely based on what should be the right thing to do. So gopis are on this side wherein just forget about everything. And Hanuman is here who would forget about everything but still would do things only the right way. How? It is based out of right attitude, right knowledge. And I was telling how Hanuman's attitude gave no room for any misunderstanding, many misinterpretation, any incompleteness that one could feel. So, not that gopis' devotion is any inferior. Even to get to the level of devotion that gopis had, we have to put in a lot of effort. Amma says it is up there and we are all here. Hanuman's devotion was also equal to that, but it had one more extra flavor to it, that of knowledge, which made the whole devotion, the attitude that he had towards Lord Rama, complete. So Amma was talking about the devotion with knowledge, devotion otherwise. She was making that comparison. And she was talking about how Goddess Sita, Mother Sita, always had this, not always, at times had this question. How is, what exactly is Hanuman's attitude towards Lord Rama? Is it truly, is it true devotion? And there was this incident wherein after rescuing Sita, Lord Rama comes back to Ayodhya. Hanuman also accompanies them. And then as a reward for all the effort, all the help that Hanuman put forth so as to help get Sita Mata back to Ayodhya, she gives a very precious necklace that she wore to Hanuman, telling, here, as a token of my gratitude, as a token of my appreciation, here, take this. And what does Hanuman do? He immediately takes it. He looks at every bead of the necklace and starts chewing them. He chews them, breaks them open, and just throws them away, every bead. And Goddess Sita found it very uncivilized, found it very weird. I gave him a very precious necklace as a token of appreciation. He's completely disrespecting it, chewing on it, and throwing them away. And she asks him, "What are you doing?" And Lord Rama intervenes, telling Sita, try to understand what he's actually trying to do. And she asks him, "Why did you chew and throw it away?" He said, "I have nothing but Lord Rama in my life. Nothing else has any significance to it. This mala that you gave me, this necklace that you gave me, is of high significance because you, Lord Rama's consort, gave it to me. But I wanted to see if Lord Rama is in them. I tried to chew and open and see whether Lord Rama is inside that. Or is it just so-called materialistic preciousness that it has? And I didn't find Lord Rama in it, so I just threw it away." And taking it further, Lord Sita, the discussion goes to, "Where do you find Lord Rama? Is he in your heart?" And he says, "Yes." And he just tears open his chest and Lord Rama appears in his chest, inside him, inside his body, is how the legend goes. So that was the level of devotion that Hanuman had, like the gopis, but his one step further was his devotion was with right understanding. So let's not misunderstand, or let's not mistake gopis' devotion being any inferior. It is the ultimate devotion that the sages and the seers die to attain, that state of devotion. But Hanuman, as Amma says, makes that whole devotion all the more complete because he has the right understanding, the right attitude when he expresses it. Similarly, all the rituals, all the austerities that we follow, they do have an impact in us. They have been prescribed by the sages and seers. They are very important for our spiritual growth, so as to inculcate discipline in us. But rather than just holding on to them, try to understand what they are trying to convey to us, take that message and move forward, is the whole point. That's what this particular verse is trying to point to us. All these rituals, if we perform them just mechanically, they are of no use. We are never getting to the state of liberation. How many ever births that we take. But if we do them with the understanding, we are growing, whether we understand it or whether we know it or not, we are growing every message that from these rituals that we take. So that is what this verse is pointing out to us. I hope this discussion made sense. So it's a new topic that we are discussing here. That's the beauty of Bhaja Govindam. It takes very practical, specific topics, and the idea is given here, or the idea is put forth through the verses. So it's Bhaja Govindam addresses all these practical things that are associated with our spiritual practices, associated with our spiritual growth. That's one reason why we selected Bhaja Govindam after the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I thought it would help us practically apply all those teachings of the Bhagavad Gita into our day-to-day life, into our spiritual life too. So let's conclude the discussion here. It is exactly 8:30. So do we do the chanting of all the verses or conclude it here? We do the chanting. Okay. We have 2 out of 2 votes here to chant. So if you have something else, definitely feel free to leave. As we always do it, we'll do the chant. We'll chant all the 17 verses together. So let's sing it in tune or chant it in tune together. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukranya Karane. Mudhajahi dhanagamatrishnam kuru sadbuddhim manasi vitrishnam yallabhase nijakarmopatam vittam tena vinodaya chittam. Naristana bhara nabhidesham drishtva maga mohavesham etan mamsa vasadi vikaram manasi vichintaya varam varam. Nalini dalagata jalamati taralam tadvajivitam atishaya chapalam vidhi vyadhyabhimana krastam lokam shoka hatam cha samastam yavat vit Toparjana sakta tavan nija parivaro rakta paschajivati jarjaradehi varta kopina pruchhati gehi yavat pavano nivasati dehe tavat pruchhati kushalam gehe gatavati vayau deha paye bharya bibhyati tasmin kaye balastavat Kridasaktah tarunastavat taruni saktah vruddhastavat chintasaktah parame brahmani kopina saktah kate kanta Te putra samsaroyam ativa vichitra kasyatvam kah kuta ayata tattvam chintaya tadiha bhrata satsangatve nissangat Nissangatve nirmohatvam nirmohatve nischalatatvam nischalatatve jivan mukti vayasi gate kah kama vikara shushka ke nire kah kasara kshine vitte kah parivara jnate tattve kah samsara ma kuru dhana jana yauvana garvam harati nimeshat kala sarvam मायामयमिदम् अखिलं हित्वा ब्रह्मपदं त्वं प्रविश विदित्वा दीनयामिन्यौ सायं प्रातः शिशिरवसन्तौ पुनरायातः कालः क्रीडति गच्छत्यायुः तदपि न मुञ्चति आशावायुः काते कान्ता धनगतचिन्ता वातुलकिं तव नास्ति नियन्ता त्रिजगति सज्जन संगतिरेका भवति भवार्णव तरणे नौका जटिलो मुण्डी लुञ्चितकेशः काषायाम्बर बहुकृतवेषः पश्यन्नपि च न पश्यति मूढः उदरनिमित्तं बहुकृतवेषः अङ्गं गलितं पलितं मुण्डं दशनविहीनं जातं तुण्डं वृद्धो याति गृहीत्वा दण्डं तदपि न मुञ्चति आशापिण्डम् अग्रे वह्निः पृष्ठे भानुः रात्रौ चुबुक समर्पितजानुः करतलभिक्षस्तरुतलवासः तदपि न मुञ्चति आशापाशः कुरुते गङ्गा सागरगमनं व्रतपरिपालनम् अथवा दानं ज्ञानविहीनः सर्वमतेन भजति न मुक्तिं जन्मशतेन. So let us conclude, sincerely praying to the Almighty that every being in the creation is happy, content and peaceful. Let us together chant the Shanti Mantra 3 times. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om.